Let's broaden out this discussion with our panel. Joining me here in the studio is Turkey's former Minister of EU Affairs and AK Party member Egemen Bağış. In Erzurum, we have Kemal Aydin. He's the Deputy Chair of the MHP, Turkey's Nationalist Movement Party. And in the southeastern city of Batman is former parliamentary candidate for Turkey's opposition Saadet party, Mehmet Nurullah Isik. And we invited members of the main opposition party, the CHP, onto the program, but they declined. Be that as it may, Egemen Bağış, congratulations.
Thank you.
Just under 53% for the president. What kind of mandate does that give him and your party moving forward?
After 16 years in government, having to deal with so many domestic and international challenges, Turkish people gave President Erdogan a very strong mandate. Most of his opponents thought he would lose in the first round and it would lead to a second round where he would no longer be able to govern. But he showed that there was overwhelming confidence. There are more than 11 million votes difference between him and the closest opponent that challenged him. This was a clear victory with, as I said, 22% difference.
Right.
So it's a very strong mandate, and the new constitution would allow him to form his cabinet as he likes and make the necessary appointments to different institutions of the government as he likes. And he would work with a strong majority in the parliament because the alliance he built with Dr. Bahçeli of the Nationalist Party of MHP has been very successful.
Right.
They have approximately 350 seats out of 600.
Yep.
Together, they will be able to pass the budget. They will be able to pass the necessary legislation. And I think Turkey will have a very bright future. Let me say this from the beginning. I think it's time for international investors to come and invest in this country because this is the time when Turkey is gearing to boom economically.
Right. Okay, let's go to our man from the MHP, Kemal Aydin. It's interesting that a lot of people still don't accept that the executive presidency and the new constitution is a good idea. Muharrem İnce didn't want it, and he said if he was going to win, he was going to reverse it and go back to the old system. I want you to have a little listen to what Muharrem İnce had to say about checks and balances, and then I want to get your opinion on that after that. Have a listen. So, Mr. Aydin, we have Muharrem İnce conceding defeat, saying, okay, there weren't major problems with the election. I accept defeat, but we're sliding towards one-man rule. Your response to him is what?
Yeah, I think this is very typical of CHP, you know. I mean, because as the main opposition party, they have always insisted on doing, you know, just the other way around, what the government says or what the government does. But to be honest with you, you know, when we try to analyze the political adventure of the young Turkish Republic, you know, we can talk about the three phases. The first phase is the establishment phase. Then the second phase is the parliamentary system. But after the thwarted coup attempt on the July the 15th, everything, you know, turned upside down. And then we decided to have a very strong new system because we could not compete with the previous parliamentary system. That's why two parties come together and they organize a kind of people's alliance. And they said, yes, we need a very stronger one. Presidential system, and as we already, you know, name it as the star and the crescent. Star is the president, you know, who has the responsibility of organizing the government, and the crescent is the parliamentary support behind it. That's why, and you know, people found it very convincing. That's why, you know, we won it with the proportion of 53%.
Right. Let me go to Mehmet Nurullah Isik. When I had you on the program last week, you were optimistic that this would go to a second round. Your party, Saadet Party, made a unique alliance with the opposition. In retrospect, after the election, you lost. Do you feel you made a mistake? Do you feel you backed the wrong horse?
Well, thank you very much for having me over there again. And it is really nice to be here, to be with you again. I would like to start to congratulate both parties for their big success. Specifically, Mr. Bağış, on behalf of his party and President Erdogan for their big success. I believe the result of the election were surprised by probably 60–70% of the society in Turkey, including ruling party, because before the election, when we were talking to each other as a friend, within like a private conversation, they were planning to go to second round by themselves. So including myself, my party, and probably the entire oppositions, we were very surprised for the result. Yes, I don't think that we made a mistake. However, the election campaign that we run, we could not convince our supporter regarding our partnership with the secular party, because they could not grasp the concept of the conservative and also secular party come together and make a coalition against the ruling party and MHP, their partnership, because of their conservative background.
This is interesting.
That's why I think
certainly.
the main... Yes.
Yeah, certainly. And I appreciate your honesty and the candid way you express some of the reasons for the loss, which brings me to ask Kamil Aydin, are we seeing two types of nationalisms here? Given that the MHP grew as a party in deep Anatolia, and we saw the E party do well elsewhere, are you the conservative nationalists and are they the secular nationalists? Is that the way it's now split?
Yes. MHP is a very, very strongly established and very well-rooted party, you know. And the main pillar of our party is looking for the good of people and the country. I don't think that, you know, the principles of MHP are floating, you know, in accordance with the events and social developments. And but I cannot say the same thing for the E party, you know. And MHP has always been keen on the ethics of politics. And in the last political developments, you know, regarding the country, and we see that, you know, we should establish a very strong system and we should support it. Why? Because it is necessary for the unity of people as well as the country. That's why our sense of, you know, nationalism, our sense of conservatism is nothing to do with the politics. It's for the everlasting good for the nation and everlasting good for the country.
Okay, Egemen Baysh, I know you want to add to that, but let me ask you another question. You can fold it into the answer to that. Do we have to give credit to Muharrem İnce given that he passed 30%? Previous times in the past, when we saw Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, he was, I don't know, hanging at about 25% or so. He passed 30%. He injected an energy into the electoral campaign. A lot of people, a lot of young people supported him. Do we have to give credit where it's due that this guy isn't going to go away anytime soon, and he's added something positive to Turkish democracy?
Well, Mr. İnce does deserve credit for doing better than his party. He did 8% better than his political party, and he did better than any other CHP candidate in the last 41 years. He's the first after 1977 to increase the votes of CHP to over 30%.
Right.
So he does get the credit, and I'm sure CHP base realizes that, but it's up to the people of CHP to decide who's going to lead them from now on. But it's evident that Mr. Kılıçdaroğlu was not as popular as Mr. İnce. However, in response to the question you asked, Mr. Isik, I want to say that Saadet Partisi, I think, was trapped. If they had joined the People's Alliance, along with MHP and the other organizations that chose to support Erdogan, they would have done much better because they would have a better chemistry with the parties coming from the right of the political spectrum. They chose to side with a party that abused them, that insulted them, that saw them as outsiders for decades, and they thought they could do something. The reason I'm saying they were trapped, in reality, we see the Kurdish party, HDP's vote, to be around 8% for their presidential candidate. But for the parliamentary vote, they received around 11.3%, which shows that they received support from somewhere else, and we know that CHP told many of their followers 1 out of every 3 votes in specific cities should be casted for HDP. In the meantime, CHP also worked along with E Party by sending 15 of their parliamentarians to E Party so that they would qualify to run as a new party in the elections, and then pull them back and then show them as candidates.
Right.
So Mr. Kılıçdaroğlu has carried two parties into the parliament. One is the PKK-supported HDP, the other one is FETÖ-supported E Party. And instead of supporting their allies,
do we know
Saadet,
that FETÖ supported?
E Party could not distinguish themselves from FETÖ. When Ms. Akşener was asked, her response was, if I was a member of FETÖ, I would be proud of it. And that kind of a response did not really convince people that she is not with them. I'm not saying she is with them, but that...
Because it's a big claim.
That's a big shadow over E Party. And we know that members of FETÖ, Gülenists, have publicly endorsed candidates in small cities. I'm sure Mr. Aydin can also agree to that.
And I'm sorry for interrupting you, and we're going to hear more from you a little bit later on. I just want to get two final responses from the other two gentlemen. So, Mehmet Nurullah Isik, is it time for Saadet to go back to its original alliances, to where it's more at home?
I would like to remind Mr. BAGIS that the election is over and he can stop use polarization as an election, as a main strategy of election campaign. Yes, as Mr. BAGIS mentioned, the chemistry between Saadet and between AKP will be much better. However, the condition that the AKP were offering Saadet Party was totally unfair. The AKP was not seeking a partnership with the Saadet Party. They were seeking to Saadet Party, close the party and participate them and be out of the Turkish political life. That was not fair, and that's why Saadet Party refused to be part of that coalition.
Okay, and it's going to be interesting times for Saadet to see where they go. I want to get a final response from Kamil Aydin. Mr. Aydin, what's the top priority? There's a new mandate for President Erdogan, the AKP and the MHP, in which you are part of an alliance. What's the first thing that needs to be done by this new government?
Yes, I think as far as MHP is concerned, we have given our priorities to the country and the people first. Then we said, our party and ourselves. And I think more or less this is the basic principles of the People's Alliance as well. Why? Because the president says, and in accordance with their own expressions, they talk about the Rabia, slogan, and they say, one country, one nation, one people, one flag. I think this should be the basic motto of this new government. And if we try to focus on this, the priority, I think we are going to get rid of all the problems in the future. Otherwise, honestly, we have already started to struggle heavily against any kind of terrorism inside as well as outside the country. Why? In order to secure ourselves. Because if, we cannot talk about security, we cannot talk about welfare. So within these two things, I think the priority is given to security. If we are secure at home and in the world, I think Turkey is going to face a very good future.
Okay, well, the Turkish people have decided. It remains to be seen how this government takes that mandate and puts it into practice. We're going to broaden this out into foreign policy in a few moments, but for the moment, I have to thank you, Kamil Aydin and Mehmet Nurullah Isik. Thank you very much for joining us here on the Newsmakers. Egemen Baş, stay where you are.